All right, Congress looks set to be able to pass an unemployment extension. Is, however, the extension of unemployment benefits really going to be a jobs creator, or is it just more humane safety net? And what about pro-growth business tax cuts to really create jobs? Let's debate. We have Democratic strategist Richard Socarides. He's former senior advisor to President Bill Clinton. We also welcome Harvard economist Jeff Miron, a senior fellow with the Cato Institute. Jeff Miron, if I may, let me begin with you. It has been advertised that extending jobless benefits will actually stimulate the economy and create more jobs. Do you buy that?
I think that's a highly problematic argument. On the one hand, in order to pay these unemployment benefits, we of course have to have higher taxes. So any increased consumption spending by people who get unemployment benefits has to be offset somewhere else in the economy by people who have less income to spend because they're paying higher taxes. Secondly, the evidence on whether Keynesian is
really just plays into this argument that has been created that somehow spending money here is the wrong thing to do. I mean, this is part of a very important social compact we have with people who can't find work. There are 5 people for every job now. Just by virtue of the fact that we're having the discussion, I think, we bought into this. But having said that, I think that there's a lot of economic evidence that suggests that the extension of unemployment benefits creates consumer spending and therefore spurs the economy.
That's really where I wanted to go. Jeff Miron, you heard what Richard said, and I want to particularly ask you, on the social compact, at what point does the social compact break down or threaten to break down if people who are working have to pay more and more taxes to people that don't work? I mean, isn't that an issue at some point, Jeff?
It is an issue at some point. What's not clear is exactly where that point is. Everybody, I think, can agree we need some balance between compassion and helping the unemployed versus worrying about productivity and efficiency. I think the point that you made, Larry, a few minutes ago, given that we're going to provide unemployment insurance benefits, given that we're worried about compassion, we also have to focus on some policies which are clearly going to enhance growth. Extending the Bush tax cuts would be a perfect example. It may not be the most ideal tax cut, but would be a great start. And yet the administration is not willing to consider that, as a balance to the fact that they're trying to provide compassion in other programs.
Well, Larry, what I want to know is when we talk about extending tax cuts, which may or may not be a good idea for the economy, we don't then talk about whether or not how it's going to affect the deficit. We only talk about how it's going to affect the deficit when we're talking about extending unemployment benefits.
Yeah, I understand. They're waiving the deficit rules. And I'll be honest with you, Richard, right now I worry less about the deficit and more about promoting economic growth. And Richard, I don't understand what is wrong. Where were the amendments for capital formation? Where were the amendments for some help for business, let's say faster investment write-offs, which is what all these businessmen have been telling the White House? See, I want growth. If we have growth, we can deal with the deficit later and worry about spending curbs. Richard, that's what's missing from this, isn't it?
Well, but I think
you're kidding people. You're helping them with the spare money. But you're kidding them about creating jobs.
I think there's plenty of, there's plenty of room. There's plenty of legislative initiatives around everything that you talk about. But right now we're talking about people who are in need of desperate need of the extension of these unemployment benefits. And if people have this little bit of a safety net, I mean, we're really not talking about giving a lot of money away. This is a couple of $100s here. And if people have a little bit of a safety net, I actually think that intuition suggests that they'll be in better shape to go and look for jobs. And at a very basic level, I mean, I'm not, a fancy economist, but at a very basic level, I think that this continues to, the payment of these benefits spurs consumer spending and is helpful.
Jeff Miron, give you the last word. What's the best way to grow this economy and create jobs? If you could wave a magic wand, Jeff, what would you do?
Magic wand would be lower tax rates and entitlement reform that doesn't have to cut a huge amount of spending right away, but puts the country on a path where we get Medicare, Social Security on some stable basis relative to the size of the economy.
All right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Thank you ever so much. Richard Socarides, Jeffrey Miron, we appreciate it. Coming up, the Big Bang Brush-Off. The invite list for tomorrow's FinReg bill signing at the White House has been uncovered.